Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard and this is episode 64 of Brainstoryum. Today, as ever, I will be making excellent use of the pause button to brainstorm story ideas from the bizarre and always challenging game of Exquisite Corpse. I do like a good writing prompt challenge. Please join in if you fancy giving it a go yourself. Grab a pen and reach for your pause button if you feel the stirrings of a story idea at any time that you want to try. For writing is the practice of wonder. We never quite know what's going to happen next, and that's the real magic of the imagination. First, I'll be sharing some story ideas from listeners who did just that, hit the pause button and wrote down what they thought might happen in a story about the creepy writing desk. Was it horror, fantasy, thriller writing, or a mix of all three? Stay tuned to find out. Then afterwards, I'll be reaching into the socks of destiny for 3 new journeys into our imaginations. Now, in the last show, the writing prompt I suggested for your ideas was indeed the creepy writing desk. And some of you responded with all due creepiness. Nick Vrakar, who writes urban and contemporary fantasy with a splash of horror, said, "The mesmerised shipwright opened the door into the tunnel, into the secret underbelly of the museum, and Claire and Bethany followed. Behind the exhibits, there was his mistress's den, layered secrets stacked on an old writing desk. Whoever she was, her plans laid bare here. Plenty of intrigue to explore here. What are these mysterious secrets? And who is this mistress?" Thank you for sharing your idea, Nick. Anthony Addis, who writes suspense with a dash of romance, said, "I'd start with sounds inside the desk. Strange, vague chitterings. When the drawer is opened, the wood in there is bloodstained and splintered. Sure enough, the main character's finger gets splintered when they run a hand inside the drawer, and blood feeds the evil inside the desk." Very creepy. I particularly like this idea that blood feeds the evil, like it's a vampiric sort of desk and thirsty. Thank you, Anthony. Cliff Jones Jr., who writes dreampunk and sci-fi, fantasy, horror combinations, and is the editor of 2 dreampunk anthologies I've written in, see my other fiction page, suggested, "A writer who's just starting out inherits an old writing desk from his father, who wrote several novels in his life but never submitted them for publication. To save on rent, the son moves into his father's house, which is in bad shape but paid for. Over the course of the story, the house becomes incrementally smaller and more dilapidated as the writing desk grows, becoming more solid and ornate until the desk is all that remains, isolated in the woods, with the young writer using it as a shelter." Wow, this is a very strange idea and quite dreamlike. An unusual take on the creepy writing desk. I like it. Thank you for sharing, Cliff. Actor Paul Thomas said, a security guard at a historic village museum is checking and locking up the buildings for the night. When he reaches the old schoolhouse, a lump grows in his throat. This building always terrifies him. Will he hear the strange tapping coming from inside that shadowed, creepy desk, the third from the back on the far side, always the same one? Muttering a silent plea to the ghosts of the building not to tease him tonight, he turns the handle to go inside. Thank you, Paul. That draws us right into the scene. Very atmospheric. And I just want to know what happens next. Do let me know if you work that out. Daniel P. Riley, who writes fantasy, light sci-fi and thriller horror combinations, said, "By compulsion or some effect of the beyond, I am trapped here in this seat before this aged desk alone. There is nothing around me that I do not scribble upon the page myself. If I wish to see a forest, I must describe it, and its lacking details become terribly obvious to me when it appears. Food and drink must be nuanced, else I devour pretty but flavourless objects to stave off hunger. God help me if I fail to describe the meal accurately. At best, I have been passable at illustrating water and bread. How I wish I could describe a turkey roast with its accompaniment fixings in such a way that tastes right. This horrid dimension affixed to this devilish desk, I fear, will be my grave, but only if I write it so. Forgive me, my dear family. You must be beyond worry by now. I only desired to be among the great authors, yet I cannot escape a purgatory that relies upon skills I do not possess. I just want to go home." Wow, this is a fascinating idea of an author trapped by the magic, this cruel magic of a writing desk, and all because he or she desired so much to be a great author. Makes it feel quite dangerous. I love the voice of this piece, taking us a little back in time as well, and written as a letter. Thank you for your piece of flash fiction, Daniel. And remember, folks, if you do write and publish a short story based on any of the writing prompts in the show, do let me know, and I'll give you another shout out, quoting whatever link there is to where other listeners can find your story online. One day, when I have enough of these references and links, I will create a page at annatizard.com dedicated to these inspired works and feature them all there. I shall probably have to call it the Brainstoryum Emporium, because why not? Anyway, without further ado, it is time to dip once more into the strange world of our imaginations and the socks of destiny. That's right, the socks are bursting with your words. So thank you to everyone who sent words. There's been quite a few different people lately. Oh, and yes, and for those who haven't played the game before or haven't listened before, Exquisite Corpse is a surrealist word game that mixes different words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. So I am reaching first into the describing word sock. And I have a word from Alessandro Bozzo. Serendipitous. Okay, that's a nice word to begin with. Who doesn't like the word serendipitous? But what or who was serendipitous? Our first noun is from Paul Thomas. Theatre. That's an interesting combination. How could a theatre be serendipitous? Just reaching for an action now. This is from Rebecca Gleisner. Travelled through a portal with. So an entire theatre is about to travel through a portal with someone. Curiouser and curiouser. Let's try for another describing word. This is Alessandro Bozzo again. Ghastly. Okay. So not a happy trip through the portal. And the final word, our noun, is from Stalky. Archivist. Okay. So I'm just going to read the whole Exquisite Corpse first. If you've not listened before, never fear, it will make sense in time. The Serendipitous theatre travelled through a portal with the ghastly archivist. Whoa. Well, I'm going to start with that fabulous phrase at the beginning, serendipitous theatre. On its own, what could this mean? What kinds of serendipity could occur within or be caused by a theatre? Like tickets becoming available just when you want them, cut prices for people who are just browsing some of the entertainment pages, assuming they can't afford to go, and then the show they really fancy going to just happens to be at a good price and on a night that they're free, or on an anniversary or a birthday when the subject of the show is particularly relevant to their relationship. And then it turns out to be the perfect gift for their best friend or partner. Or is the theatre more serendipitous for the actors who play there? Someone looking for their big break, and a big director comes to watch this rather small production and is very impressed, and it leads to an audition for a movie which then changes that actor's career forever. And this happens quite a lot in the serendipitous theatre. What actor wouldn't want to play in a theatre like that? There are certain superstitions around theatres, aren't there? Like you shouldn't say the title of that Shakespeare play, the tragedy they call the Scottish play, and saying things like break a leg. There must be loads more I don't know about. Although, obviously, not all actors are superstitious, far from it. I wonder, though, serendipity seems like the opposite of that negativity, that fear or anxiety, which probably comes quite naturally from the nerves that actors and other production staff must get right before a show. Behind the curtains, a theatre can be a nerve-ridden place. So much could go wrong. And people have paid for their tickets and have expectations. But so much can go right. And there's a kind of force for positivity, for things working out in this particular theatre that counters the atmosphere of fear lurking around the dressing room door and in the prop storage room, so full of jumbled shadows poking in all directions. And then at the other end of the Exquisite Corpse, we have a ghastly archivist. What mischief could he have up his sleeve other than to meddle with this scary-looking collection of props? Secretly, he sneaks into the theatre at night, wearing a white mask under a black cloak that covers all but his fake face, in case anyone sees him. For he knows that some of the production team are superstitious enough to just run and scream if they saw him, rather than approach and question. He considers the prop collection as his own archive of accidents to come. Wobbly chair legs, sofas that aren't secure, ropes dangling treacherously, chains, torn costumes, false doors, false sections of flooring which can be used as trapdoors. This is his ghastliest trick yet. In the night he comes with a torch and a saw. He cuts a square gap into the boards on stage, just where the star of the show is meant to stand for her big climactic monologue. He saws and he smooths, and he rigs the square section in the stage floor so that it will collapse at the push of a button, where he will stand just off stage, in a gap between the curtains, unseen. And he lowers into the space beneath the boards a range of horrible surprises for her: spiders, poisonous snakes, razor blades. His heart pumps with ecstasy at the prospect of screams, terror, confusion, perhaps even death, injury, certainly. This is his theatre. This is where he was meant to star years ago, but one moment on stage, stumbling over his lines, dazzled by the overhead lights, crushed his confidence forever. And now he plots his own plots. Will his plan work? In any other theatre, perhaps. But this theatre is different. It has a certain serendipity about it. It has a kind of spirit. It cares about the actors who tread its boards every night. And while the trapdoor will flap open, it won't do quite what this ghastly trickster is expecting at all. On the night, just at the wrong moment as he presses the button, the actress steps aside from the trapdoor as it swings open, unnoticed by her and her fellow cast members, so rapt are they in her emotional speech. And then a strange force begins to pull the archivist across the stage. He scrambles. He grabs hold of the curtains, which tear between his grasping fingertips. He cries out as he's dragged in front of a startled audience and the cast who glance at each other in shock and bafflement. At the sight of a snakehead poking up through the square gap in the stage floor, gasps and screams start up, and the cast hurries off stage just in time. The man is pulled headfirst into the hole, and the stage itself, including the entire framework, the rigging for the lights and the curtains, collapses in on itself like a house of cards. The last thing you hear is the trapdoor banging shut. The audience is standing, staring at nothing. A monstrous gap where the stage was only a second ago. They cannot make sense of this because the Serendipitous theatre travelled through a portal with the ghastly archivist, or so the Exquisite Corpse goes, which means the entire stage has been sucked into another realm with the criminal. This is a travelling theatre like you've never come across before. What happens next? Well, that would be another step in this bizarre tale. Perhaps snakes and spiders will become walking, talking beasts of our nightmares, according to the rather different rules of the world in which they end up, in the middle of a collapsed stage. The archivist, the trickster, will be their slave, a star in a freak show where humans have never been seen before. Well, that was creepy. Time for another Exquisite Corpse? I think so. Let's try for a describing word. This is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts on the old net. Cruel. Okay, well, that's a straightforward word. We know we're dealing with someone quite nasty. And our next word, our noun, is from Mark. Black horse. Can a horse be cruel? Herd animals, which can be jittery, nervous when kept in stables, but let us see what happens. So the action is from Paul Thomas. Inherited from. Inherited what, though? I suppose that's for us to work out. A little extra detail might fall into place once we have the rest. So let's find another describing word. Oh, this is again from Paul Thomas, sending me lots of words. Heart covered. Okay. Can't quite see how this is going to come together. Very different from cruel. What or who was heart covered? So our final noun is from Robin the Mail Lady. Mountain. We have a heart-covered mountain. Okay, it's probably time for some green tea, but I will read out the entire Exquisite Corpse, and then I promise you it will make some kind of sense by the time I'm done with it. The cruel black horse inherited from the heart-covered mountain. Gosh, okay, that is peculiar, and yes, it is time for some green tea. Okay. Yes, my friend got me some Japanese sencha. It's very nice, very light. Anyway, so the cruel black horse inherited from the heart-covered mountain. How can you receive an inheritance from a heart-covered mountain? It depends what that inheritance is. Some dark magic. I feel like the horse is no ordinary horse and is bound somehow to this mountain. Mountains are definitely magical places. The best holiday I've ever had yet has been in the French and Swiss Alps. There is something about the mountains, I can tell you that for free. But if a mountain has to give something to a cruel horse, a horse that's lost its way in the mountains, clopping along a dusty path with shrubs and straggling trees sprouting here and there, where the cool air grows thin and the snow is powder dry, glowing bright under a cold sun. The horse has lost its rider, or has thrown its rider off the edge, for this is a cruel horse. Sleek, shimmering black and beautiful. How can a mountain be heart-covered? Maybe this is some deep magic, a slow-grown magic, gained over many decades, even centuries, as the dwarves who mine under the mountains have put their hearts into their work. They've loved the mountains as their homes, and over time this collective love, this energy, this homely feeling of belonging has permeated the jagged landscape and given it a magical potential that it never would have had if it had stood for the same centuries alone. And here is this black horse who's lost its home and cannot even remember what it was like to run free across the fields with its siblings where its mother gave birth to them. A lifetime of pulling carts up dusty roads had driven it mindlessly to follow the same dry, empty pathways even after its rider and the cart had gone. Its sense of homelessness went deep into its bones, and all it could do was walk and walk without purpose. until a dwarf crossed its path, stumbling, injured. "Please," gasped the dwarf, "I fell. I think I've broken my wrist. My ankle's twisted too. I can hardly walk. Would you help me? Give me a lift into the heart of the mountain. It's only a couple of miles from here if you follow the main road where it branches off to the left." The horse hesitated to help the dwarf, but having nothing else to do, stopped and allowed the dwarf to climb onto its back. This feels like a fairy tale type story, a folk tale, or in that style. And so I'm going to suggest that 3 such events occur, as is the tradition. Each event is where the horse is begged for help by a stranger and it helps them. And in the end, it's rewarded for its kindness. The dwarves let it into their home through an unexpected archway between 2 mountains, where a meadow opens up and spreads out under the sun, where they keep horses and other grazing animals. And this is what the cruel black horse inherited from the heart-covered mountain: a new home, a family, and a sense of security and adventure. Time for a final exquisite corpse. We reach into the describing word sock, and I have a word from Paul Thomas again. Fleeing. Okay. So technically that is a verb rather than an adjective, but that's why I say describing word instead of adjective, because it leaves it open to words like this. So we have a noun from Anonymous. Student. A fleeing student. Fleeing from what? Not knowledge, surely. The action is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Knocked out. So either punch someone, causing the person to lose consciousness, or I suppose you could use some other way to make someone lose consciousness. Who or what is worth punching, according to this story? So our next describing word is from Mariah. Fearsome. Okay, maybe that makes it worth it if they're fearsome. Final word is from Paul Thomas again. It's your week or your fortnight. Paranormal investigator. Ooh, that's a good one. So we have, altogether we have the fleeing student knocked out, the fearsome paranormal investigator. I want to know what they're a student of. The whole sentence has a feeling of a lot of action. And it might be partly because of this verb at the beginning, which just throws in that little bit extra. But it's not just that. So the student is fleeing, running from the start. He's either punched this paranormal investigator or poisoned them to knock them out. Either way, that gives it a sense of physical urgency in doing such a thing. If you're trying to incapacitate someone physically, then, well, unless you're a bit of a sociopath, we want to assume that that person must pose some kind of physical threat. And on top of that implied threat, in case we were in any doubt, the paranormal investigator is described as fearsome. Interesting, because investigating the paranormal involves dealing with scary stuff, if we are to believe in such things, at least for the sake of a story. It makes me wonder if the paranormal investigator has begun to take on some of this scariness over time. The qualities of the ghosts, maybe even the undead, if we're going to go all out there for a paranormal story. These frightful qualities or properties have begun to rub off on the investigator. She spent too much time in their company. She has tried so hard to be fearless in the face of horror every night on her job, watching, always watching at the periphery of the graveyards and abandoned houses where ghosts lurk. Over time, her thick-skinned attitude, her resilience, has begun to turn into something else until she herself is fearsome. Who is this student? He is her apprentice. He's employed part-time, of course. He's midway through his degree. An odd combination of business studies and history, I reckon, but he's an odd kind of guy, the right kind of guy for this job. And she, let's call her Isla, is nearing the end of her ghost hunting career. She has to be. It's been wearing her down. She sits at her desk, the lamp spilling its yellow glare over the newspaper cuttings. Is it old-fashioned of her to work this way, even as her laptop hums on the other side of the desk? Maybe. But Isla has always felt there was something in the kinds of knowledge that you can touch. Having been in the presence of so many beings who could not touch or be touched, perhaps that was it. She tried to piece together the story, to find the connections between all these potentially paranormal events, potentially because nothing could be taken for granted even after all these years of experience. The unexplained noises in the town hall, which had befuddled not 2 but 3 structural engineers. It was getting expensive for the council. The reported appearances of a waif-like figure glowing faintly in a car park. Again, council property. Did it mean anything? Maybe not. Isla used to work for the council years ago, so this detail was probably more noticeable to her. She had to try and stay focused on the facts that mattered. She sighed and rubbed her hands through her hair, then pulled back, realising she'd just run her inky fingers through her already messy bob. Holding out her hands under the lamplight, she turned them over. Grey smudges on her fingertips. But the rest... She gasped and jumped up, nearly banging her head on the lamp. Her hands were unnaturally white, almost silver. Ooh, so something is happening to Isla. But let's look at the Exquisite Corpse again. Why would the fleeing student knock out the fearsome paranormal investigator? He finds her. They meet up in a dark place. She hoping to hide her predicament, but at the same time desperate to talk to him about it. To have someone who understands her work give an opinion about what might be happening to her, even if it were just wild speculation. But as they talk, something changes in her manner, something ghoulish. Or she grows sharp fangs, long claws, eyes like deep, hungry holes stare at him. The student turns and flees, but when Isla follows him down an alleyway, he spins and manages to knock her out cold. He stands over her unconscious body, breathless, disbelieving. She's still clearly solid, physical, not a ghost, but becoming something. There's an implied moral duty here. Since Isla took him on as her eager student, he can't just leave her here. With difficulty, he carries her back to her flat, flops her down onto her sofa, and tries to work out what on earth is happening to her. Well, there's the beginning of a fascinating story. And is there a connection between what's happening to Isla and the cases that she's trying to solve? Maybe she is the connection. Okay, now would be a good time to work on your evil laugh. So what have we had today? A serendipitous theatre. What a curious word combination that gets sucked into a portal with an evil archivist who gets his comeuppance. Then a cruel, lonely horse making its way up a mountain. But it's a mountain full of secret power which would change the poor creature's life forever when it chooses to do good. And finally, a paranormal investigator turning into one of her worst nightmares. It's ended up a little bit spooky, hasn't it? It's funny because this always seems to happen right before Halloween. Whether it's the words that are coming in, or if it's something subconscious in me as I try and interpret those words, I don't know. Does it matter? The end result is deliciously spooky. But what shall I invite you to explore with your own story brainstorms this time? I don't know. I feel like I'm caught between the serendipitous theatre because it's so strange and it could mean so many different things, and the fearsome paranormal investigator. Let me know what you think if either of those spark off an idea for me. Find the contact button at annatizard.com on any page footer and share. Share just because you can. Now, before I say au revoir, I mentioned in the last show that I've recently joined a local storytelling group in Brighton, near where I live. And all being well, on the 2nd of October, I will have a chance to play Exquisite Corpse live in person in between the other storytelling acts of that night. And I'm very excited. I haven't done this before in front of an audience of storytellers. I've played with friends, family, colleagues, people who just want to do it for laughs and don't necessarily have that expectation to delve into story brainstorms with you there and then. I should probably be terrified, but I'm just excited. I mean, it has occurred to me, I won't have a pause button, no stop button, no green tea brewing on the side. Little bit worried about that, but equally, it may not be up to just little old me. I'm hoping that the small, cosy audience that makes up this lovely group will be eager to share their ideas and will be inspired themselves by some of the strange word combinations that will crop up. I really hope so, because that's what will make it really fun and fulfilling for me, certainly. So, while you may not be based anywhere near the southeast of England, wherever you're listening from, I will do my utmost to share everything I can about that evening in the next show. And also, depending on the outcomes, I'll probably, I'm thinking about creating a page on my website listing the best exquisite corpses that come up, maybe some of the ideas that come up as well. So please do join me in a fortnight's time and listen out for that. And keep your fingers crossed for me. Who knows, depending on what comes up and how well it goes, I might even make it a special show dedicated to all of that. We'll see. But never fear, if you've sent me words via my play page, they are in the socks of destiny, and they will come out when they are ready to come out, or as the natural serendipity, or supernatural serendipity of the game dictates. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.